We've been gathering here this is our fourth time on the Old Courthouse Green here in Burke County. In 3 years now, we've been talking about taxed enough already. And has our government learned? Have they lowered the taxes any? No. In fact, since 2009, our taxes are scheduled to go up another $670 billion over the next 10 years. This government has violated 14 times their oath not to raise taxes on the middle class. Taxes are going out of sight. They haven't turned yet. And what about the economy? Do you know that the average economy, or the average recession, or the recession in the last 9 years has lasted less than a year? 9 of the last 11 recessions have lasted less than a year. This recession has been going on for 3.5 years now. Look at inflation. Now the government says, don't worry about inflation, that it's not going to be a problem. I don't know what store they're going to when they go shopping, but you look at faces of the people that are in these stores and they are worried. Bread, milk, eggs, poultry, meat, canned foods, all going out of sight. And look at gas prices. When this administration took over, gas was $1.86 a gallon. Last week, I paid $4.16 in Clay County to fill up my truck. Now they say it's not a problem because they've taken gas, fuel, and food out of the equation when figuring inflation. That is crazy. If they put that back in, inflation would be well over 10% a year. Look at employment. And I say employment, not unemployment, because they say that unemployment has dropped from what? Close to 10% down to 8.2% now. So it makes it sound like things are a lot better. But look at the employment number. I used to be a financial analyst, and anytime anybody starts talking in percentages, a red flag ought to go up, because you can do anything you want with a percentage. Employment numbers. The last I saw, we have 132 million people employed. 3 years ago, that number was down to 129 million. So yes, they have not created, but restored 3 million jobs. But the last time we had 132 million employed was back in 2000. 12 years ago, we had the same employment number. Back in 2008, before the Great Recession, employment was 138 million people. That means we are still down 6 million jobs from what we had back in 2008. Does anybody see what I see? Does anybody care? Next thing I want to talk about is the national debt. National debt is close to $16 trillion. Within 7 years, at the rate we're going, it'll be $25 trillion. As a father of 4 and a businessman, this terrifies me. The interest on $25 trillion is $625 billion a year. Just the interest. That is close to what we spend to defend our country. And if our credit rating drops the way it's dropping now, just the interest could be over $1 trillion a year. Last year, we only took in $2.3 trillion in total tax revenue. And we're going to be close to half of that paying interest. That is the destruction. That is the demise of the American economy and our way of life in just 7 years. Does anybody see what I see? Does anybody care? How did this happen? Why is it still happening? Well, it began back in 1913 under President Woodrow Wilson. It's when the liberal, progressive agenda really got underway. That and the fact that we haven't done anything to stop it. Yes, we've sent, 80-some Tea Party congressmen to Washington, but it hasn't stopped yet. They're still going in the same direction. We have had wave after wave of socialism pounding against our Constitution, eroding our freedoms, and destroying our American culture. We need to be that force in nature that draws that line in the sand and says, thus far, and no farther. And then, as in nature, begin rolling those waters back, rebuilding our Constitution, reestablishing our freedoms, and restoring our American culture. I'm going to give you the words of a famous, powerful world leader who back in 1949 described what it was like when European socialism swept across Spain and Germany and Italy. And see if these words don't sound familiar to what we're going through today. Winston Churchill said, "Laws, just and unjust, may govern men's actions. Tyrannies may restrain or regulate their words. The machinery of propaganda may pack their minds with falsehood and deny them truth for many generations of time. But the soul of man, thus held in trance or frozen in a long night, can be awakened by a spark coming from God knows where, and in a moment, that whole structure of lies and oppression is on trial for its life." We need to be that spark, one of those sparks that steps up to that liberal progressive agenda and stops it and turns it around. So how do we do this? I mean, like I said, this is the 4th Tea Party meeting we've had. 3rd year in a row that we've met out here, and it's still going wrong. I read and study the Bible every morning. The King James Version. I'm kind of old school. And it's the morning meal. The other day, I was reading 1 Corinthians 9, verse 26. It's where Paul says, "And so fight I, not as one that beateth the air." And that's what we need to do. We need to stop just beating the air with words. We need to stop just beating the air with our arms at other people's faces because they're not listening. And they're very good at what they do, this liberal progressive agenda. We need to begin taking the human footsteps to engage the process as they have. You need to step up at whatever level you're comfortable with to work with the communities in the counties and the cities and on the committees and other civic organizations to reestablish the American culture on the grassroots level. Step up and get involved. As many of you know, I'm stepping up at a level I'm comfortable with. I'm running for U.S. Congress. And so fight I for term limits to put all of Congress on the 22nd Amendment with the President, where he's limited to 2 4-year terms. It's the professional politicians that are bankrupting this country who have lost all touch with reality as to what a dollar means. They don't even talk about money anymore. They talk about budgets and surpluses and deficits. They never use the word money. Our founding fathers would be stunned to know there's such a thing as a professional politician, because they weren't our founding politicians. They were our founding fathers who had families and homes, and they couldn't wait to get home to them once their work was complete in government. We need to reestablish that culture of government and have people work, serve, and then come home and live under the same laws that we're living under. And so fight I to balance the budget, stop the bleeding, attack the deficit. This needs to be done the way business approaches the deficit in a company to balance the budget. First thing we do is consolidate, and then we cut, and then we control. We need to move all czar positions under the cabinet positions. We need to reduce the number of cabinet positions from 14 back down to 11. We then need people in charge of those cabinet positions that know what they're doing and tell them to cut their personnel by 25%. Now, when you cut personnel, I'm not in favor of laying people off. But those people that are cut from those departments, they're talented. They have abilities. We need to unleash that ability and get them out in the workforce where they can contribute to American society. What you have left are the best in the departments. And you challenge them to maintain what they've been doing and provide the services they've always provided. Because what those people are going to do, and this is what happens in business, they refine the processes. They have to accomplish what they were doing more with fewer people. So they get rid of the duplication of effort. They get rid of the waste. They get rid of the inefficiencies. And this is where the government saves money. This is where the company saves money. Once you get that spending down and then you control it. If you've got people that say they can't do it, then you get other people to do it. This works in business, and this will work in government to stop the bleeding and start reducing our debt. So fight I to reduce the government debt. This has got to be done. And so fight I to affirm God in government. Not religion in government, but God in government. Our founding fathers put God in the Constitution and in the Declaration of Independence. But we have an administration now, a government now, that is trying to abolish all references to God. There was a famous philosopher back in the 1920s and 30s. His name was G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton wrote, "Once abolish the God, and the government becomes the God." Once abolish the God, and the government becomes the God. Is this not what is happening in Washington today? We have a government that is trying to abolish all references to God in government, in the workplace, and in our schools. This needs to stop. This is an attack on the American Christian Judeo culture, and we need to turn it around. We've got an election coming up. This is a big year. A presidential election, congressional election, and local and community elections. This is huge. This could be the turning point of our country. Do we continue down the path of the liberal progressive agenda, or do we draw that line in the sand and stop it now? Next week, early voting starts here in Burke County. The primary. This primary will be the biggest voice you ever have in government. Not only you, but you need to encourage your neighbors, your family, your friends to get out and vote. Do you realize the last primary we had 2 years ago, less than 8% voted? We had an unemployment of over 14%, and 8% showed up. That is pitiful for a free America that we have now, America that we are losing. Get out and vote. Does anybody see what I see? Does anybody care? Is anybody there? Thank you.
Yeah.
Vance, we're here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Tea party.
Okay.